Hey everyone, Nitsahone Magic here. This is my first video in a series of videos about this particular deck that I've been working on and is still a work in progress. It's a budget deck. You could make it for under $20, and it's a really fun deck. It does pretty well against Tier 1, especially creature-based decks. So I'm just going to talk about it a little bit before I start recording games with it. It's a zombie tribal deck for the most part, but it's pretty aggressive. But it has lots of tricks and ways to generate hand advantage and various other things. One of the big tricks is Necromancer's Stockpile, which you can see here. Every creature in my deck is a zombie, so when I discard it, I get to make a zombie and draw a card from it. This is especially effective with creatures like Gravecrawler, who can be discarded with it, make a 2/2 zombie, and then I can cast it from my graveyard. Similarly, for Risen Executioner, I can discard it, make a zombie, and play him from my graveyard. He's a little more costly, but he still can do the trick. I also have a singleton Vengeful Pharaoh in here to work sort of as an instant speed removal spell that just keeps coming back. I mean, obviously, after I do it the first time, my opponents will know. I can discard him with my Necromancer's Stockpile while my opponent's attacking me, and he will destroy the creature that just attacked me, and then he'll go back to the top of my library and I can discard him again, or cast him if I need to. In addition to the discard outlet of Necromancer's Stockpile, I also have the less impressive Rakdos Guildmage, but he can turn any zombie I have, or any card actually in this case, into a removal spell. Or if I really need to go wide on my opponent late in the game, I can use his other ability to put 2/1 goblins into play. Obviously, the first one has more synergy with the deck and is more important most of the time. I also run 3 Dreadbores, and so to deal with planeswalkers, which are often difficult to deal with, and 4 Terminates for instant speed removal. In terms of creatures, other than the ones that sort of combo with the Necromancer's Stockpile, I also run Blood Scrivener, who actually does sometimes combo with the Stockpile. All my zombies can be discarded, of course, to the Stockpile, but in this case, if I have Blood Scrivener in play and I discard a zombie, I actually get to draw 2 cards at the cost of 1 additional life, of 1 life. And I also run Geralf's Messenger. He's just crazy efficient, super effective card that's incredibly difficult for my opponent to deal with, and he usually is one of the major finishers in the deck, especially in conjunction with Risen Executioner or Death Baron, who also gives all my zombies as a zombie lord and gives them all +1/+1 in death touch, making things even more problematic for my opponent. I also run 3 copies of Tymaret, who also combos well, incidentally, I forgot to mention, with the Stockpile, not as effectively as the Executioner or the Gravecrawler, but he can be cast, he can't be cast from my graveyard, but if I sacrifice a creature, I can return him to my hand and just keep discarding him. He's also frequently a way the deck ends games, because, I am really aggressive early and I get my opponent down to low life, but if they stabilize, that can be a huge problem. But it's not as much of a problem when you have Tymaret. He can just start throwing guys at my opponent. He is especially problematic for my opponent when I start hurling Geralf's Messengers at my opponent for 2. The Geralf's Messenger comes back and does 2 more, and then I can just basically pay 4 mana to do 6 damage to my opponent if a Messenger doesn't have a counter on it yet. Like I said, this deck is pretty cheap. Gravecrawlers and Blood Crypts are the most expensive cards in it. The Blood Crypts, believe it or not, are actually one of the cheapest of the dual lands. As are the Dragonskull Summits are also incredibly cheap. You can buy them for about 6 cents on the various websites you can buy cards on. And most of the cards in here aren't expensive at all. The stockpiles aren't expensive. The messengers are a little expensive, but they're actually less than $1 a piece, about 70 cents a piece. Same for executioners. The Death Barons are also under $1. Everything in the deck, other than the Blood Crypts and the Gravecrawlers, are less than $1 to buy. Oh, actually, I lied. Terminate is also about $1. The Dreadbores are actually really cheap, which kind of surprises me. Um, my sideboard, which is also a pretty budget sideboard. If I were going all out, I'd have a Blood Moon in my sideboard, but I don't because it's ridiculously expensive. Um, so this deck's poorest matchups are more against Amulet Bloom and Tron, basically. And this deck, even after sideboard, will struggle somewhat with them. But uh, I run a fourth Dreadbore in the sideboard against someone who has a lot of Planeswalkers. I also run the three lightning bolts in the board because sometimes Dreadbore is just useless. I mean, it's basically just a bad terminate against opponents who don't seem to run any planeswalkers. So I side in the 3 bolts, and they're pretty good against decks that have smaller creatures. Aggro decks, the burn decks. Lightning bolt's really effective. Slaughter Games is something to side in against Tron. I can name one of their big combo pieces and really hurt them. Rakdos Charm. I didn't mean to say Tron here. I meant to say Amulet Bloom. Rakdos Charm, same thing. It's useful against Tron and Amulet Bloom. It can destroy their important artifacts and really slow them down. Even though this deck already has a pretty good matchup against Abzan, it gets even better after sideboard. I can side in my Stromgald Crusaders in place of the Blood Scriveners, who have protection from white and can gain flying and are just really problematic for them. And what's even more problematic for Abzan players is probably Lifebane Zombie, who can hit most of their really good creatures in their hand while also being a pretty good offensive force on the ground if they don't get Tasigur or another black creature in play to block it. Plus, we can kill Tasigur pretty easily, but the nice thing about the Lifebane Zombie is especially when you can hit a Siege Rhino with it, because that really disrupts their game plan and makes things easier for us. Anyway, that's the deck. It's pretty cheap. I'm going to play some games with it in the tournament practice channel here on Magic Online. And I'm going to post videos of that and the process as I'll probably end up making more and more changes to this deck. I already have made some, but I didn't start recording until now. So I'll show the videos and I'll show the changes I make, and let me know what you think. All right, I'm going to go record some games now.